God does not exist.
But you haven't accounted for the ancient astronomical evidence.
I'm Dr. Yosef Wolf. I became religious while defending my PhD in astrophysics. I had many atheist friends who thought I went crazy while I tackled a mountain of evidence to build my convictions. I want to share that experience with you so that you can build your own toolkit in order to advocate for God and religion. It's one of the oldest questions, a battle between pure logic and ancient faith. But what does the data say? What if we found connections between the words of ancient scholars and discoveries of our most powerful telescopes? Connections that history says should not be there. And to appreciate what they knew back then, we first have to understand just how little we knew until very, very recently. For centuries, our cosmic neighborhood felt relatively small. We knew about our Milky Way, our sister galaxy Andromeda, and maybe a dozen or so smaller dwarf galaxies tagging along in our cosmic backyard. That was the map. That was home. Then, in the year 2000, humanity decided to build a new map. It was called the Sloan Digital Sky Survey, an audacious project to take a picture, not of a star, but everything in the sky. What it found didn't just add to the map, it rewrote the books. Suddenly, our quiet neighborhood wasn't so quiet. The survey revealed countless new dwarf galaxies, hiding in the darkness right next door. Tiny ghost-like galaxies with only a few hundred stars, some almost entirely made of dark matter. Think about that. This isn't ancient history. This discovery, this new understanding of our cosmic backyard happened in our lifetime. The truth is, most of the mapping of our universe only happened in this past generation. So, if our complete picture is this new, what could they have seen? What could ancient scholars with no telescopes, just their eyes against the dark desert sky, possibly have known? The answers found in their texts are more astonishing than you can even imagine. Our journey begins not with a number, but with a promise, a paradox. In the Bible, a recurring blessing is that children of Israel will be as numerous as the stars. But for thousands of years, that was a strange promise, because to the naked eye, there are only a few thousand. To give some context, it wasn't until 1609 when Galileo pointed a telescope up to the heavens with a maximum magnification of 30 times what our eyes could see, did we first begin to learn of celestial objects like Jupiter's moons or the rings of Saturn. In 1771, just 5 years before the founding of America, Charles Messier was the first to catalog all that we thought we were able to observe with further advances in telescopic optics. This brings us to Rashi, a brilliant Jewish scholar who lived in the 11th century. There was no modern astronomy back then, but he understood that this blessing meant an impossible abundance. He didn't see a number, he saw a code. The question is, how did he crack it? The key was not in Rashi's time. It was in a much older text, a rabbinic discussion from over 1500 years ago that contains not just a story, but an audit of the heavens. In it, the sages calculate the number of stars. It's a dizzying hierarchy, but the final number is 10 to the power of 18. That's 1,000,000 trillion, a number so vast, it is not that far off from modern estimates for the entire observable universe. This wasn't a guess, it was a calculation. The question was no longer if they knew, it was how they knew. But an extraordinary claim requires extraordinary evidence. Was that calculation just a philosophical metaphor? Or is there a specific testable case of this impossible knowledge? There is, and it has been hiding in plain sight all along. This is the logo for the Subaru car company. Subaru is the Japanese name for a celestial object known to every ancient culture, the Pleiades star cluster. With our naked eyes, we see 6 or 7 or perhaps 8 stars, but the ancient texts argue about whether there are 100 stars or 1,000 stars. And this from a cluster that only shows 6 to 8 stars. For centuries, that sounded like a myth until modern astronomy confirmed it. There are in fact over 1,000 stars in the Pleiades star cluster. How did the sages know this? They knew what we could not see. The proof was not buried in a lost library. It was hiding right above our heads the entire time. The question is no longer if they knew the impossible. The question we are left with is how. If the ancient texts understood the true scale of the stars, could they have also known the true nature of a star? Let's look at the one we know best, our sun. It seems so simple, so constant, but in the book of Psalms, King David writes something deeply strange about it. In Psalm 19, he wrote that God set a tent for the sun. A tent? The single most powerful object in our sky needs to be contained? The great sage Rashi, commenting on this verse, confirms it. He says this is the source for the teaching that the sun is kept in a case. And King David goes even further. In Psalm 84, he describes God with a breathtaking metaphor. For the eternal God is a sun and a shield. Not a sun with a shield, a sun and a shield. The source of the power is also the containment. This ancient poetry becomes breathtakingly precise when we look at the sun with modern tools, because the single greatest paradox of solar science is the corona. The corona is the sun's outer atmosphere, completely invisible to us every single day. And here is the paradox. The surface of the sun, the part that we see, is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the corona, the invisible tent farther away from the surface, burns at millions of degrees. It is hundreds of times hotter than the surface of the sun. A tent to contain the sun, a shield that is part of the sun itself. This is a perfect description of the solar corona, an invisible layer of superheated plasma that contains and shields the sun's true furnace. It's another piece of impossible knowledge penned by a king in the desert thousands of years before we could ever verify it. Now we're left with an inescapable conclusion and yet an impossible question to answer. The conclusion: the numbers are in the text. The question is, how? This is at the heart of our journey together on this channel, finding these extraordinary intersections between faith and verifiable data. And I genuinely want to know what you think. What is your theory for how this information survived for thousands of years? Was it divine inspiration, a lost branch of ancient science, or something else? Let me know your best theory in the comments below. I promise to try to read and respond to as many as I can. It's one of my favorite parts of making these videos. And if you really want to see how deep the rabbit hole actually goes, come explore with me additional links between modern science and ancient texts, not just here, but in all realms. For example, if quantum mechanics has ever interested you, wouldn't you like to learn how applying quantum physics could actually help us prove the Bible's version of the age of the universe? I've linked it right over here. It takes everything we've spoken about today and pushes it to the next level. Click the thumbnail and I'll see you over there.